Hey guys, tonight we're taking a slow, winding trip through one of the most chilling and bizarre periods in history. One you definitely don't want to find yourself in: medieval Europe during the Black Death. Imagine the scene: streets choked with fog, the unmistakable odor of decay hanging in the air. You're walking down a narrow, filthy street, pulling a cart, its wheels creaking beneath the weight of the dead, the sick, and everything in between. Welcome to the life of a medieval plague cart driver. Now, don't get too comfortable just yet. If you were really there, well, you probably wouldn't survive this. But hey, you'd be pretty legendary if you did. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And go ahead and let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. It's always cool to know where in the world we're connecting. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The Black Death, or the Plague, came crashing into Europe in 1347, like a freight train that no one saw coming. It arrived in a world that had no understanding of germs, bacteria, or how diseases spread. Imagine this: 1 minute, your village is going about its usual business. Farmers plowing fields, women hanging laundry, children chasing chickens, and the next, it's a race against time. People are dropping dead in the streets, their bodies swollen, blackened, and oozing pus. The air is thick with fear. And guess what? You've been hired to transport the victims. You're not a doctor or a healer. No, you're a cart driver there to collect the sick and cart them to the grave, day after day. But that's just the beginning of your nightmare. You'll need to get used to the eerie silence that follows you, the looks of horror and pity that come from every corner. You won't just be transporting the dead, but those who will soon follow them. But how did this disaster actually unfold? And what exactly did it mean to be part of that dark parade? Historians still argue about the precise origins of the plague, but most agree that it started in Asia before traveling westward along trade routes. By the time it reached Europe, it was already a force of nature. And so, there you are, standing at the edge of this grim new reality. Your first task: to round up the infected. You can already smell the sickness before you even get close. It's not just the odor of death, but the smell of despair, as families lose their loved ones faster than you can carry them off. The cart becomes a symbol of both dread and relief. To some, it's the end, and to others, it's their last chance at survival. You've probably heard that the Black Death was the deadliest pandemic in human history. But when you're a medieval plague cart driver, that fact doesn't exactly make you feel special. It just makes you another pawn in the nightmare game of survival. Picture this: you're hauling your cart through streets filled with people who know without a doubt that they're next. The disease moves faster than anyone can comprehend. Bodies start piling up quicker than your cart can handle, and every street you travel down seems more suffocating than the last. The plague hit with no warning, sweeping through Europe at lightning speed. It arrived in 1347, carried by fleas that hitched rides on rats. Both unwelcome travelers from distant shores, as these tiny creatures hopped from ship to ship, from city to city, the disease made its way across the Mediterranean like a bad storm, leaving destruction in its wake. No one had any idea what was going on at first. They didn't understand germs, bacteria, or how diseases spread. So the authorities and citizens just did what they thought was best: quarantine, prayers, and random acts of superstition. People turned to religious processions, magic potions, and even flagellation. Yes, some believed that if they whipped themselves hard enough, God would spare them from the plague. Spoiler alert, it didn't work. But you, as a cart driver, are far beyond such hopeful thoughts. You're right there in the thick of it, carrying the unfortunate, the sick, and the dying. You're the one who gets up close to the suffering. You're the one who sees the victims before their final breath. Most of them don't even have time for a proper goodbye. They just collapse, and your cart becomes the last stop. But here's the kicker. You have no idea how the plague works either. You just know that people are dropping like flies, and you're getting paid to cart them off to who knows where. Historians still argue whether the disease was a single strain of bubonic plague, or if it was some combination of different illnesses, possibly including pneumonic plague. Either way, it didn't matter for you. What mattered was the job. You're hauling people who are sick, and soon, your own chances of survival are becoming slimmer by the day. As the plague progresses, there are moments when it feels like the entire world is closing in on you. The screams of the dying echoing through empty streets, and the stench of disease, of your very purpose, filling your lungs. As you roll your cart through the city's streets, there's a chill in the air, not because of the weather, but because you can feel it in your bones. The panic, the uncertainty, the ever-present fear of what might happen next. If you stop for even a moment, you're reminded that anyone can drop dead at any time. And then, the unimaginable happens. The people who were just yesterday standing on the sidelines, praying to avoid the plague, are now piled onto your cart. They were the last to hope, the last to believe. And now, they're going down the same path. The disease continues to spread relentlessly. It doesn't discriminate whether you're rich or poor, healthy or not. It didn't matter. You might think that being a cart driver gives you some kind of immunity, right? Well, that's where things get tricky. Historians still debate whether working so closely with the sick and dying gave plague cart drivers an edge in surviving the disease. Some say that the exposure made you more likely to get sick, while others argue that the disease didn't care who you were if you were going to die. It didn't matter how much you saw it or how often you came into contact with it. For you, the most terrifying thing isn't knowing you'll carry the dead. It's knowing that at any moment, you could be the one to collapse. The more you work, the more it feels like you're just waiting for the disease to catch up with you. you start wondering, is it a matter of when and not if? The truth is, no one had a clear answer back then. Even the doctors didn't know how to handle the plague. They thought the disease was caused by bad air or miasma, poisonous air, that they believed could infect the body. And you, well, you're stuck in the middle of it all, just doing your best to survive. And survive you must, as death tolls rise. The city becomes eerily quiet, and your job grows more unbearable with each passing day. The streets, once filled with people, carrying on their lives, now look like the ghostly remains of a civilization on the brink of collapse. It's not just the job that's exhausting, it's the weight of the situation itself. With every trip, you take not only bodies, but also a piece of your own humanity, trying to hold on to any scrap of normalcy in a world that's completely falling apart. Let's be clear, there's nothing glamorous about being a medieval plague cart driver. If anything, it's the opposite of glamorous. You're basically a human garbage truck with a front row seat to society's collapse. And I haven't even told you about the streets you have to work in. Think of it, cobblestone streets filled with filth and decay. Your path is never clear, and it's never easy. The idea of a clean street is a foreign concept. Instead, you're trudging through a maze of muck and death, fighting to keep your cart from getting stuck in the mire. Picture it. You're wheeling your cart down a narrow lane. And what do you encounter first? Piles of rotting food, animal carcasses, and human waste. The sanitation system back then was, let's just say, not exactly cutting edge. If you were lucky, the streets might be cleared once or twice a year, but usually it was just a breeding ground for disease. And that wasn't just the Black Death you were up against. It was all the other infections, from cholera to dysentery, that ran rampant in the medieval world. At this point, even a cart full of sick people doesn't seem so bad compared to the stuff you're stepping through. The air smells of rot, waste, and something far more sinister that sticks to your skin, creeping under your nails. Historians still argue whether sanitation played a role in slowing or speeding up the plague. Some claim that the dirtier the environment, the faster the disease spread. Others point out that while medieval cities were notoriously filthy, there were still areas of the cities, like monasteries, that were kept relatively clean. Either way, you don't have the luxury of worrying about these things when you're moving bodies by the dozens. There's no time for cleaning, for disinfecting, for anything. The stench of the plague is everywhere, and you have no escape. Your job is to collect bodies and deliver them to mass graves or plague pits. It's not glamorous, but it's necessary. The alternative is worse, leaving them on the streets to rot. In those early days of the plague, as you carry your cart through the streets, you realize just how close you are to the edge. People are dying so fast, and they are not even getting proper burials anymore. The idea of burial pits is introduced mass graves where the dead are unceremoniously dumped. Some say the pits were hastily dug and filled to the brim with the corpses of plague victims. Other accounts suggest that whole neighborhoods were abandoned, and the streets became filled with the smell of death as bodies were carted away. That's the reality of your world now. Every time you step out with your cart, you're helping carry a part of the city's soul to its final resting place. The cart is not just a vehicle for the dead. It's a symbol of what has become of this place. But it's not just the bodies you're hauling. It's the sheer scale of it all. You are witnessing the breakdown of society in real time. As the plague spreads, even the most basic institutions begin to fail. Shops close, families abandon their homes, and the church, usually the center of life, loses its power to comfort the masses. In fact, many turn away from the clergy, unsure of how to make sense of a plague that seems to be indiscriminate. It's a nightmare, and you're in the middle of it. And as the days wear on, your cart gets heavier. Not just with bodies, but with the weight of what's happening. You wonder, as you pull your cart through the muck, whether you'll even survive this. It's not like you have any protection. There's no hazmat suit waiting for you at the end of your shift. Instead, the best you can do is wear a simple cloth mask. If you're lucky, you might get a rudimentary gown to shield yourself from the worst of it. But that's about as far as protection goes. Some of you resort to wearing plague masks, those beaked monstrosities filled with herbs, hoping to stave off the stench and protect yourself from the disease. But even with the mask, the fear lingers. The people around you are getting sicker by the day, and you can feel the disease creeping closer to you. The plague is like a shadow. You can't outrun it, and you can't escape it. Historians still debate whether these early forms of protective gear actually helped. Some claim that the masks and gowns offered little more than a false sense of security. Others argue that these early methods were more about psychological comfort than anything practical. Regardless, you're still at risk. Your job puts you in direct contact with the sick and dying, and there's no way to guarantee you won't catch the disease. With each corpse you load onto your cart, you feel your chances slipping away. You may think the plague cart driver's life was a temporary one, but it wasn't. The plague didn't strike once and then leave. No, it returned again and again, in waves. With each return, your job became more urgent, more horrifying. The toll on the city's population mounted, and each wave of the plague left behind an even more broken and desperate society. People began to fear the cart almost as much as they feared the disease itself. You, the driver, became a harbinger of death, not just a worker. It's not just the bodies, the filth, or the stench that makes this job so grim. It's the loneliness, the isolation, the fear of dying alone. As you roll your cart through the city streets, you look around at the faces of the survivors, but even they won't come near you. They look at you as though you might be carrying the plague yourself. The world is shrinking, and you're left with nothing but the constant shuffle of your cartwheels and the quiet, unsettling murmur of death at every corner. As the plague rages on, your role as a cart driver takes on an even more harrowing significance. In the early days, you were just a worker, a man with a job, albeit a grim one, but now it feels like your existence has become a symbol of the plague itself. You trudge down the streets, your cart piled high with bodies, and the townsfolk scatter as soon as they see you coming. You're the messenger of death, and the only thing people know about you is that you carry the infected, the dead, and the dying. There's no room for compassion, no room for comfort, only the silent, grim march of survival. And it's not just the survivors who fear you. The very nature of your job means you're constantly exposed to the virus. You get up close to the infected, whether you're loading them onto your cart or helping them into the mass graves. You're right there in the thick of it. People, of course, understand this, and they begin to treat you like a leper. If you're not careful, the whispers start to follow you. The suspicion that you've already been exposed to the plague and are now carrying it in your very body. The idea of quarantine starts to take root. But for you, the cart driver, quarantine means isolation, not just from the outside world, but from any semblance of connection or community. Historians still argue whether this stigma was a protective measure or just a way to deflect responsibility. In medieval times, people didn't know about germs or viruses, so the idea that the sick and dying were cursed or marked by God was prevalent. The cart driver, constantly exposed to the disease, was seen as someone touched by death. Perhaps even a vessel for the plague itself. But this fear was far from logical. It was driven by superstition and panic. You, just like everyone else, were a victim of circumstance, caught in the wake of an unimaginable disaster. The stigma didn't stop with the people on the streets. Either you might have had family and friends once, but as the plague continues its deadly march, those relationships begin to fray. People, fearing for their own survival, keep their distance. You may have a wife, children, or parents, but as the plague spreads, they start to avoid you. Even the ones you once trusted, the people who relied on you, begin to withdraw, and in your heart, you understand why. They are afraid of the disease you're exposed to every day, afraid of the consequences if you carry it home. But it's not just your family that's slipping away. Your identity is slowly being erased. The job, once just a grim task, has now become your defining feature. No one calls you by name anymore. They call you the plague driver, the corpse bearer, the bringer of death. You've become synonymous with the disease itself, and in a way, that's all you are now. A reminder that no one is safe, that the plague doesn't care about your title or your status. It comes for everyone, and you're the one who has to carry its burden. There's no escaping the mental toll this job takes on you. Day after day, you wheel your cart through the city, collecting the sick and the dead. It becomes routine, and yet it never loses its horror. The people you collect aren't just numbers. They're faces, families, lives that once meant something. As you work, you begin to wonder how much longer you can go on like this. How many more bodies can you carry? How many more lives will you witness end before it's your turn? You try to hold on to some semblance of normalcy. Maybe you still laugh, or maybe you still pray. But the reality is that those small acts of humanity are becoming harder and harder to perform. The world around you is so different from the one you knew before the plague. The city is a shell of itself. Once bustling marketplaces are now silent and desolate. The streets you once knew are unrecognizable piles of bodies, empty homes, abandoned buildings. Your job might be necessary, but it feels endless, like you're on a treadmill that won't stop. It's not just the job that's soul-crushing. It's the fear that comes with it. Every day, you get up, knowing that you're one step closer to being overtaken by the very thing you're fighting against. You begin to wonder if it's all worth it, if you can survive this, or if, like the bodies you cart, you too will become just another casualty of a world gone mad. But there's a part of you, deep down, that still clings to hope. Maybe it's because you know that, in a way, you're still doing something important. You're helping people, even if they can't see it. You're carrying the dead, yes, but you're also keeping the wheels of life turning. Without people like you, the city would fall into complete chaos. You are the lifeline. You are the one who ensures that, even in the face of overwhelming tragedy, the world doesn't completely collapse. And then there's the small moments when you're loading a body into your cart and you catch a glimpse of someone's eyes. Someone who is still alive, still fighting, still holding on to hope. For a brief second, the horror around you recedes, and you remember that there's more to life than death. But those moments are fleeting. As soon as they come, they vanish. The plague is relentless, and you can't escape it. You can only endure. You're not just hauling bodies, though, as the plague drags on, you start noticing something even darker than the work itself. The fear, it's not just the survivors, it's the entire city. People start to view you not just as a cart driver, but as a walking symbol of their worst nightmare. You see, when death becomes as familiar as a face in the crowd, people stop making sense. They fear your proximity to the disease. Every time your cart rattles past, the air seems to get thicker with panic. Children stare from behind shuttered windows, too scared to even breathe the same air as you. Historians argue whether the plague drove the medieval population to complete hysteria, or if it was simply the survival instinct at play. Either way, fear overtakes everything. The worst part, that fear is contagious. You start to fear yourself. You're not just worried about getting sick. You're starting to wonder if you're even human anymore. At first, you thought you were just a worker doing a grim job. But with each passing day, you become more like the plague itself. An unstoppable force of nature, carrying death with you. Wherever you go, you're not alone in this feeling. The townspeople start to form their own, somewhat ridiculous ideas to cope with the fear. Quarantines are enforced, but not always fairly. Some towns have walls built around the sick, while others are left to fend for themselves. No rules, no mercy, but that doesn't matter to you. You're still the one who has to roll through these barricades, collecting the bodies of the fallen. You see, there's no clean break in this job. It's just the same cycle, over and over. Haul the sick, haul the dead, haul more bodies. If you're lucky, you get a day off. But even then, the plague doesn't stop. It's always lurking in the background. But let's get real for a moment. The fear that you carry isn't just from the people around you. It's from within. The constant exposure to death starts to break you down. No one talks about it, but you begin to wonder if your body is still yours, or if it's just another vessel for the disease. You see the way people avoid you, your friends, family, even strangers. They're all terrified that, like the bodies you carry, you'll soon be one of them. They don't say it, but it's in their eyes. It's in the way they recoil when you come near. Historians still debate whether the isolation that came with the plague was psychological or physical. Some believe that the mental toll of being constantly surrounded by death created a kind of self-imposed exile for plague workers. Others think the quarantine measures were more of an economic and social necessity to stop the spread. Either way, for you, it's a nightmare. You've lost contact with most people. No one wants to be around you. The mental anguish becomes just as suffocating as the disease itself. As the months drag on, you feel the city becoming emptier. Fewer people are left. Shops are closed. The sounds of life, children playing, vendors shouting, the hum of daily activity are slowly replaced with silence. Every corner you turn, there's less life. The plague is taking its toll, and not just on the bodies. The very soul of the city is withering away. The streets, once filled with laughter and activity, are now filled with emptiness, and the only sounds are the clatter of your cartwheels and the distant toll of the death bells. You can almost hear the city crying, but there's something else that's even worse than the empty streets. The realization that you can't do anything to stop it. You're powerless in this situation. You're doing your job, hauling bodies, doing your part in a world that's falling apart. But you know deep down that it's all futile. The plague has no mercy, no end. Some people have given up completely. They lock themselves in their homes, waiting for the inevitable. Others try to flee, but there's nowhere to go. You can't escape something like this. Then, just when you think it can't get worse, it does. The disease mutates, and the second wave arrives with even more ferocity than the first. It spreads faster, it hits harder, and now you're not just hauling bodies. You're hauling people who haven't even had time to get sick yet. You see the look in their eyes, desperation, fear, and you know they won't survive. You're no longer just carrying the dead. Now, you're carrying the memories of everyone you've lost along the way. The work is unrelenting, but so is the fear. You know that even if you survive this, you won't be the same. The weight of it all the bodies, the fear, the isolation has already left a permanent mark on your soul. The plague continues to decimate the city. One day, you realize you're the last one standing, the last driver, the last witness to what's been lost. But even as you stare at the devastation, you keep moving forward. You have no choice. The city's collapse is just a backdrop for your survival. The plague has taken everything from you. Your family, your friends, your dignity. But you keep going, because that's what you've always done. And then, as suddenly as it came, the plague starts to recede. The death toll slows. The carts aren't as full, and the city begins to rebuild itself. But you don't feel relief. You feel empty. You've seen too much, carried too many bodies, and lived too long in the shadow of death to ever feel like things will go back to normal. Life, you realize, can never be the same. It's a strange thing, watching a city rebuild itself after something like the Black Death. Most people think that when the plague ends, the world will snap back to normal, as if it had never happened. But for you, the driver of the plague cart, there's no normal to return to. You can't erase the memories of what you've seen. The streets filled with death, the haunting silence, the hopeless faces of the infected. The world around you might move forward, but you're still stuck in the past, carrying the weight of a tragedy that never truly leaves. As the days pass, you begin to notice something else, a strange disconnection between the people who survived and the ones who lived through it all. The survivors don't know what it's like to haul bodies, to witness mass graves, to walk past piles of the dead. Every day, they've emerged from the plague, shaken, but mostly intact, and now they're focused on rebuilding their lives. They can go back to their homes, their jobs, their families, like nothing happened. But for you, there's no going back. The work has drained you in ways that no one can understand. Historians still argue whether the survivors of the plague experienced trauma similar to what soldiers face after war. Some believe that the psychological toll was just as devastating as the physical effects of the disease. Others argue that the trauma of the plague was something that couldn't even be processed. At the time, it was just too overwhelming. But you know the truth. The emotional scars are still there. Every time you close your eyes, you see the faces of the dead, and you can still hear the sound of your cartwheels turning, the creak of the wood, the sickening thud as each body is loaded. There's no escaping it. You don't talk about it. No one does. There's no room for grief when there's rebuilding to do. The survivors want to move on, and they expect you to do the same. But how do you move on from something like that? How do you go back to a normal life when normal is a word that means nothing to you anymore? In fact, many of the survivors go about their lives as if the plague was just another bad event, a tragedy that they can now close the book on. But for you, the trauma never ends. It stays with you. It eats at you, slowly chipping away at your sanity. Even as the city rebuilds itself, you're stuck in the ruins of your own mind, replaying the scenes over and over, unable to forget. The social dynamics of the plague aftermath are strange. 2. The survivors, for the most part, seem to move on quickly, but there's a noticeable shift in how they view you. You, the cart driver, are seen with a mix of awe and fear. You've lived through the plague, and you've seen things that no one else can even begin to imagine. But that's also why they avoid you. You've been too close to death for too long. You're no longer one of them. Historians still debate how the plague changed medieval social structures. Some argue that it led to the collapse of old hierarchies and the emergence of new, more flexible social systems. Others believe it was the final blow to an already crumbling feudal system. Either way, for you, it doesn't matter. You're not interested in the politics of survival. All you care about is getting through the day without being overwhelmed by the memories. You're not the only one dealing with these lingering effects. Over time, the people who survived the plague become more cautious, more fearful of another outbreak. The city may be rebuilding, but the fear of the disease still lingers. People stay indoors more often, afraid of coming into contact with anyone who might carry the plague. The idea of quarantine becomes a permanent part of society. Even long after the disease has passed, it's as if the plague has left a permanent scar on the city, a scar that refuses to heal. You still carry that scar, too, and as much as the city may rebuild, you can't help but feel like you're walking through the ruins of a place that no longer exists. The plague may have ended, but the damage it caused, both physical and emotional, will never truly go away. For you, there is no moving on. You are the last person standing, the last reminder of a world that has collapsed. And as much as you try to pretend that everything is fine, you know the truth. Nothing will ever be the same. But that doesn't mean you've given up. The plague didn't break you. It tried, but it couldn't. You may carry the scars of what you've seen, but you're still here. And as the city rebuilds itself, you realize that maybe that's all you can do. Keep moving forward. Even if it's through the wreckage of the past, you may never find peace, but you will survive. And survival, in the end, is all you can ask for. As the city begins to rebuild and life starts to return to a semblance of normalcy, you can't help but feel out of place. You're still alive, yes, but in some ways, that's become more of a curse than a blessing. The survivors talk about the plague like it's something in the past, a chapter they've closed, a story they tell in hushed tones, their voices quivering but filled with relief. They've moved on. They're focused on the future, on rebuilding their homes and their lives. But you're stuck in the wreckage of everything that was lost, haunted by memories that refuse to fade. Even as the streets fill up again with people, the marketplaces bustle, and the sounds of life begin to fill the air, you feel a creeping isolation. There's no real place for you in this new world. You've carried the dead, helped bury the fallen, but there's no reward for your sacrifice. No thanks. No recognition. You were just a tool, a cog in the machine of death. The city has forgotten the role you played in surviving the plague. And maybe, just maybe, it's better that way. You've become a ghost in your own life, walking through the streets like a shadow, carrying memories that no one else can understand. You can't help but wonder what happened to the others, the ones who worked alongside you, hauling bodies, loading carts, and silently moving through the city. Where are they now? Did they survive? Or did they fall victim to the plague, just like so many others? You try not to dwell on it. After all, it's not like there's much left to connect you to the past. The world is moving on, and you're still stuck with the weight of it all. There's something strangely numbing about survival, especially after something as horrific as the plague. You've made it through, yes, but now you have to live with the consequences. The memories of death and suffering are etched into your mind. The faces of the sick and dying, the sound of bodies being loaded onto your cart, the smell of decay. They linger, haunting you at every turn, and no matter how hard you try to muss them away, they always return. You begin to notice that the survivors don't talk about the plague as much anymore. The pain of loss, the grief, it's all there, but it's buried. People don't want to dwell on it. They want to move forward, to rebuild, to forget. But forgetting doesn't work that way, does it? You can't just turn off the switch. Stop remembering. Stop feeling the weight of everything you've been through. Historians still debate how long the psychological effects of the Black Death lasted. Some argue that the trauma persisted for generations, leaving deep scars on the survivors, while others claim that people simply adapted and moved on. But for you, it's not that simple. You can't just adapt. You can't simply erase the memory of what you've seen and done. It's a part of you, now woven into the fabric of your being. You can't shake it off. It's not something you'll ever get over. And that's the hardest part. There's no closure, no end to it. As the city begins to rise from the ashes of the plague, you try to reintegrate, to fit in with the new world. But every day, you feel like an outsider. The people around you may have survived, but you're not sure you have. You've been through something they can't even begin to understand, and you know they'll never truly get it. They can't. They weren't there. They didn't carry the bodies. They didn't feel the weight of the disease on their shoulders. They weren't the ones who saw their world crumble. Piece by piece, you try to move forward, to build a new life for yourself. But it's like trying to build a house on shifting sand. Every time you start to get comfortable, the ground beneath you trembles. You realize that you can't really build anything because the foundation has been destroyed. There's no safe ground to stand on anymore. The city has rebuilt itself, but you haven't. You're still walking through the wreckage, still carrying the weight of the past with you, and it feels heavier with each passing day. And then, one day, it hits you. You've been living in the shadow of the plague for so long that you've forgotten what it feels like to live for yourself. You've been so focused on surviving, on getting through each day, that you've lost sight of the fact that there's a world beyond the plague. You've been consumed by it, by the need to keep moving, to keep hauling bodies, to keep surviving. But now, you have to ask yourself, what comes next? You can't live forever in the shadow of the plague. You can't let it define you. The world is moving on, and maybe it's time for you to do the same. Maybe it's time to start living for yourself again, to find a way to heal, to rediscover the person you were before the plague turned your world upside down. But healing isn't easy. It doesn't come overnight, and maybe, just maybe, it'll never come at all. You've been through something that changed you, that broke you, and the hardest part is realizing that you can never go back to the person you were. The plague has left its mark on you, and that mark will never fade. But maybe, just maybe, that's okay, because in the end, survival is a victory in itself. The city's rebuilding continues, but it feels less like revival and more like an awkward, half-hearted attempt to restore what was lost. People go through the motions of rebuilding, putting up new walls, reopening shops, and tending to the crops that were once left to wither. It all looks fine from the outside. The streets get swept. The markets fill up. The noise of life returns in fits and starts. But for you, the plague cart driver, it's impossible to pretend everything is fine. You can't unsee what you've seen. You can't unlive the moments that have reshaped you forever. You walk through the streets, and what do you see? The laughter of children, the chatter of vendors, the mundane, everyday bustle. For everyone else, it's life again. But for you, every smile, every voice is like a reminder that you're still haunted. You try to blend in, to walk alongside the survivors as they get on with their lives. But it's like trying to merge into a crowd when you've always been on the edge of it, observing. It's like stepping back into the world, but realizing it doesn't fit you anymore. Not really. Historians still argue whether post-plague society was truly reborn, or whether it was just a ghost of its former self, limping along on the crutches of survival. Some suggest that the mass death led to a kind of rebirth, that the survivors found themselves liberated from the old constraints of medieval feudalism, ushering in a new era. Others argue that the scars were too deep and that medieval society never fully recovered. It's easy to see both sides of the argument. The social fabric was irrevocably altered. The world had changed, whether anyone wanted to admit it or not. But you don't care about politics or social revolutions. You care about finding a way to live again without the constant shadow of the plague hanging over your head. The weird part, though, is that you're not alone in your isolation. There are others who carry their own scars from the plague. Not everyone who survived made it out unscathed. You hear whispers about people who have lost their sense of purpose, people who can't look at the streets the same way, who can't stand to be around others because they're afraid of what they might see in their eyes. The fear, the judgment, the knowledge that they too carried the burden of death. You start to see it all around you. The fractured souls of people who survived but never quite healed. And maybe that's the most unsettling thing of all. It's not the plague that ruined you. It's the way it changed everyone else, how it broke the very spirit of the city. But maybe the worst part of all is that you start to see it in yourself. You start to ask, can I ever really be part of the world again? The truth is, you're not sure. You've been through something so monumental, something so devastating, that you're not sure where you fit in anymore. And you start to question whether you ever really fit in at all. Maybe you were always meant to be on the outside. Maybe you were never meant to be part of the world you've just watched shatter. As time wears on, you start to find solace in small things. The quiet moments that give you a brief respite from the weight of your past. You begin to understand that healing isn't about forgetting or erasing the past. It's about accepting it, acknowledging the scars it's left, and learning to live alongside them. And slowly, it begins to dawn on you. Maybe the world hasn't left you behind. Maybe it's just that you've had to carve out your own place in it, a place that no one else can fully understand, because no one else has walked the same path. The city continues to rebuild, but you are forever changed. You no longer look at the world in the same way. You see the cracks beneath the surface, the subtle remnants of the plague that still linger in the air. You hear the echoes of those who didn't make it, and you know that their spirits still hover around, unnoticed by the rest. You know that the past can never truly be erased. No matter how hard people try to move on, historians still argue about the long-term effects of the Black Death on medieval society. Some say it marked the end of the Middle Ages, paving the way for the Renaissance and the Age of Exploration. Others believe that it led to an era of profound social upheaval, with old systems of power and control unraveling at the seams. But for you, it doesn't matter what historians think. You've lived it. You've survived it. And in the end, survival is what matters most. You keep walking through the city, day after day, as life moves on around you. You've learned that you can't escape the past. You can't outrun the memories. But maybe, just maybe, you've found a way to keep going, to keep moving forward, even with the weight of everything you've seen on your shoulders. In the end, that's all you can do. Keep moving. Days blur into each other now. The city continues to recover from the plague. But for you, it's a different kind of existence. One where the old rhythms of life are gone, replaced by a quiet, almost eerie sense of routine. You find yourself walking the same streets, passing the same buildings, but nothing feels quite the same. The people are moving on. They're rebuilding, thriving even. But you're not part of their world anymore. You're a spectator, watching as the world spins around you, disconnected from it all. You still carry the scars, the memories of the bodies you hauled, the people you couldn't save, the faces that have now faded from your mind, replaced by the hollow emptiness of the plague's aftermath. Some days, you wonder if it's all even real. Maybe it was just a bad dream. Maybe the plague was just a shadow, a passing nightmare. But then you step outside, and the world reminds you that it was really. The buildings may be rebuilt, the streets may be full of people again, but the ghosts of the past never fully leave. Historians argue whether the long-term effects of the plague left medieval Europe permanently scarred. Some claim that the social fabric was never the same, that it led to a deep shift in how people saw themselves and their place in the world. Others argue that human resilience is such that, despite the horror, society eventually finds a way to move forward, to rebuild. Either way, you know your own truth. No matter how much the city tries to move on, you'll never truly be part of it again. Not in the same way. As time passes, the people around you try to go back to their normal lives. They rebuild their businesses, their homes, their families. But for you, that normalcy feels like a distant memory. You've seen too much. You've carried too many bodies. You've felt the weight of death too often to ever be the same person you were before the plague. The world that is slowly returning to life seems foreign to you now. It's like a new city, a new world, but you're stuck in the old one, the one that existed before. The plague came and turned everything upside down. You try to adapt. You try to fit into this new world. But every time you try, you feel like an imposter. You look around and you see people who've moved on. They've rebuilt. They've recovered. They've forgotten. But you can't forget. You can't erase the faces, the bodies, the cries of the dying. You can't undo the reality of what you lived through. And that, perhaps, is the cruelest part of survival. You're left with the memory of what's gone, and you're forced to live in a world that doesn't quite understand you anymore. The mental toll of it all is staggering. You've lived through the worst thing a person can endure. You've seen the city collapse, and you've seen it rise again. But you're not the same person who lived in that city before. That person is gone, lost to the plague, and in their place is someone who can never fully reintegrate, never fully belong. The survivors move forward, but you're stuck, watching from the sidelines, knowing you'll never truly be part of their world again. And yet, somehow, you endure. Every day, you get up and move through the city. You carry on. Maybe that's the only victory you can claim. You survived, and you keep going, even when the world feels like a stranger's face. There's no triumph in this survival, no great victory. It's just the quiet, stubborn act of living on, of continuing, despite everything that's been lost. You look at the new world being built around you, and for a moment, you wonder if it's worth it, if it's worth trying to fit back in, to build something new, to hope again. But then you remember the plague. You remember the weight of those bodies, the look in the eyes of the dying. You remember how the world came to an abrupt halt, how everything you knew was torn apart, and how you were the one who carried the pieces. And you realize that you can never really be part of this new world. Not in the way that they are, but maybe that's okay. Maybe you weren't meant to be the same. Maybe the survivor's job isn't to return to what was, but to live with what is, to endure, to keep moving forward, even when the past haunts you. So, you walk through the city. You carry on. one step at a time, one day at a time. The world will rebuild, but you know that the weight of what you've seen will never leave you. It's always there, in the background, lurking in the corners of your mind, reminding you of the fragile nature of life and the unyielding reality of death. And maybe that's what survival is all about. Not finding peace, not finding closure, but simply continuing to live, even when the world around you is no longer the same. The years pass, and the city continues to rebuild. You've become a fixture in the streets now, just another case in the crowd. But it doesn't feel like you're home anymore. It's as if you're just going through the motions, trying to survive in a world that's grown foreign to you. The streets are filled with the hustle and bustle of daily life again. But to you, it's all a blur. Faces come and go. Voices rise and fall. But nothing sticks. There's an emptiness inside you that no amount of rebuilding can fill. The people who survived the plague are slowly returning to their old routines. They're laughing, chatting, working, living as if the world hasn't changed. But for you, the world will never be the same. You can't look at the streets without seeing the remnants of the past, the faces of the dead, the bodies you carried, the fear that you lived with for so long. It's all there, lurking beneath the surface, a constant reminder that you've seen too much. And as much as the city tries to move on, you can't. Historians still debate whether the survivors of the plague were forever changed by what they witnessed. Some argue that the trauma of the Black Death shaped the course of history, altering people's views on life, death, and the world around them. Others believe that the plague's impact was more transient, that in time, life simply returned to normal. But for you, there's no question, life has not returned to normal. You may be walking through the streets, but your mind is still stuck in the past, still reliving the horrors that you endured. You've tried to reconnect with the world. You've tried to rejoin society, to pick up the pieces of your life, to rebuild what the plague destroyed. But no matter how hard you try, you can't shake the feeling that you're still standing on the edge of it all. You're not really part of the world anymore, just a spectator, watching as everyone else moves on without you. You're carrying the weight of something that no one else can understand, and it's a burden that feels like it's suffocating you, one breath at a time. But there's still a part of you that's fighting. You've survived the plague. You've lived through things that no one else could possibly understand. And that, in itself, is something to hold on to. You're still here, still moving forward, still pushing through each day. And while the world around you may never be the same, maybe that's okay. Maybe you don't need to fit into the world you once knew. Maybe the world has changed, and so have you. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. But the loneliness remains. It's an ache in your chest, a quiet longing for something you can't quite name. You see the survivors, those who have moved on, who have built their lives again, and you wonder if they ever feel the same emptiness you do. You wonder if they, too, are haunted by the past, or if they've truly been able to let it go. But then you realize maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe their healing isn't your healing. Maybe your journey is yours alone. The city is still here. It's still breathing, still growing, still moving. The people are still rebuilding their lives. But you're not one of them anymore. You're not the same as you were before. You've carried the dead. You've seen the world collapse. And you've lived through it all. That's something no one else can ever take away from you. It's a part of you now, an indelible mark on your soul. And as you walk through the streets, carrying that weight, you come to a realization. You don't need to be part of the city's rebirth. You don't need to fit back into the world you once knew. You've already survived something unimaginable, and that survival is a victory in itself. The plague didn't break you. It didn't destroy you. It may have taken pieces of you, but it didn't take everything. And that's where your story lies. Now, not in the world that's rebuilding around you, but in the quiet strength that you carry with you, even when everything feels like it's falling apart. You don't need the world to understand your pain. You don't need the world to recognize what you've been through. You've survived, and that's enough. The city will continue to rebuild. The streets will continue to fill, and life will go on. But for you, survival is its own kind of peace. You may never find closure, but you've found something just as valuable: the ability to keep moving forward, even when everything feels like it's slipping away. And maybe, just maybe, that's all you need. As time moves on, the weight of your survival becomes both a burden and a quiet triumph. The city around you is rebuilding itself. People are back to their lives, their families, their daily routines. You, on the other hand, are still trudging through the same streets. But now, it feels different. There's a space between you and the world that no one else seems to feel. The chatter, the laughter, the busyness. It all feels like background noise to your own existence, a world moving forward while you remain caught in the past, a memory of what once was. You've learned over time that healing doesn't come all at once. It doesn't happen because you want it to, or because the world tells you it should. The scars of the plague, the death, the suffering, the endless fear are etched into your mind and body in ways that no amount of time can erase. The physical wounds may have healed, but the emotional scars remain, buried just beneath the surface, always there, always waiting to resurface. When the world feels too quiet or too loud, people don't understand. They see you walking the streets, moving through the crowds, but they don't see what's inside. They don't see the weight you carry, the silent memories of bodies stacked on carts, the faces of the dead you still carry with you. They don't know how much it cost you to just keep moving, to get out of bed each day and face the world that you've come to fear, yet can't escape. They've gone on with their lives, returned to their families, their jobs, their homes. You've watched them do this, and sometimes you wonder if it's even possible for you to do the same. But as the days pass, you realize that maybe it's not. Maybe your place is somewhere else now, somewhere beyond what they call normal. Historians continue to argue whether societies truly recover from such catastrophic events, or if the aftershocks continue to ripple through history long after the event itself. Some say that the Black Death reshaped Europe socially, politically, and economically. Others claim that the effects lingered for centuries, altering people's psychology, creating an undercurrent of fear and distrust that never fully went away. For you, it's clear that the scars of the plague will never fade. Maybe you can survive, but you can't unlive what you've seen. The city moves forward, but you remain, in a way, frozen in time, suspended between the world of the living and the world of the dead. The hardest part isn't surviving. It's learning to live again. It's coming to terms with the fact that the world you once knew is gone. You'll never be the same person you were before the plague. And maybe that's a good thing. The world has changed, and so have you. The real challenge is finding your place in this new world, one that doesn't seem to have room for you anymore. The streets, once familiar, now feel like a labyrinth, an alien landscape that you can walk through but never truly belong to. Still, you find yourself moving forward, maybe not at the pace of the world around you, but you keep going. The days pass, and while they don't get easier, they do get more familiar. You're not healed, but you're surviving, and that's something. Sometimes you look around at the people who are rebuilding, who have reconnected with their families, their communities, and you wonder if you'll ever find your way back to that. But for now, it's enough that you're still here, still moving, still living, even if it's in a way no one else can understand. Maybe that's what survival is. It's not about finding peace or forgetting the past. It's not about fitting back into the world that was. It's about finding a new way to exist in the world that is. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's all there ever is to it. As you walk through the city, now a stranger to its once familiar streets, you take comfort in the smallest of things. The feel of the wind on your face, the sound of footsteps behind you, the simple act of surviving. The plague may have taken so much from you, but it didn't take your ability to keep going. And maybe, just maybe, that's the hardest part of all. The plague may have killed so many, but you're still here, still fighting, still living, one day at a time. It's a strange kind of peace, but it's peace nonetheless. The city continues to thrive, or at least it appears to. Life picks up its pace again as the survivors begin to rebuild their businesses, their families, their homes. But for you, there's an undeniable distance from all of it. Every corner you turn, you're reminded of the people you lost, the people who were once here, but have now faded into history, into memory. The markets are full of chatter. The streets are alive with movement, but none of it feels real to you. You feel like you're standing on the edge of a world that no longer has a place for you. It's not that you want to escape. You've done enough of that, tried to escape into the routine of carrying out your job, into the busy streets that don't stop for death. But now, when you look at those around you, you realize just how disconnected you've become. The city has moved on, but you're still here, caught in the space between life and death, between the past you carry with you and the world that's moving forward without you. Somewhere, deep down, you understand that this is just how it is now. You can't go back to what you were before the plague. No one can. The world you knew is gone, and all that's left are the remnants of what once was. The city, the people, the very air, they're different. And so are you. In some ways, you've become more resilient. In others, more hollow. But either way, you're not the same person you were before the plague took hold. Historians still argue over the psychological impact of pandemics. But for you, it's clear. The toll the plague took on the psyche of its survivors isn't something that can be measured in numbers or facts. It's something that lingers in the quiet moments, in the spaces between breaths. The trauma of what you've lived through is something that can't be explained to others, not truly. It's something that settles deep within you, like a weight you can never lift. No one will ever understand the quiet desperation that lingers behind your every step, the way you see death lurking in every corner, in every shadow. But survival isn't about understanding, it's about moving forward. Even when you don't know where you're going, you begin to realize that maybe that's all you can do. Keep walking, one step at a time. You're not the same person you were. You can't be. The plague changed everything. It changed you. And while the world around you seems to be healing, you're still here, carrying the weight of it all, one breath at a time. At times, it's overwhelming. You can't seem to shake the feeling that something has been lost, something that can never be found again. You watch as others laugh, as they reconnect with their families, as they rebuild their lives, and you wonder what it would be like to be part of that again, to be able to look forward with hope, to rebuild, to live in the present, without the constant shadow of the past hovering over you. But every time you try, you realize that it's not so easy. The weight of what you've seen, of what you've done, follows you like a shadow. And yet, despite everything, there's still a part of you that refuses to give up. You keep moving forward. The streets may not feel like home anymore, but they're still there. The city may not be the same, but it's still standing, still breathing. And so are you. Maybe that's the hardest part of survival. The fact that even when everything around you changes, you still have to live. You still have to find a way to exist in a world that feels like it's left you behind. But you keep going. You have no choice. The survivors have their lives to rebuild. And maybe, just maybe, that's something you'll never truly do. But you'll keep moving, one step at a time. And perhaps, someday, the world around you will stop feeling so foreign. Perhaps, in time, the weight of the past will become something you can carry without feeling like it's dragging you under. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but one day you'll find your place in this world again, even if it's a different place, even if it's not the place you once knew. There's a certain kind of numbness that settles in after the plague, something that sneaks up on you without warning. You've survived, yes, but now that the worst of it is over, you begin to realize how much of yourself you've lost along the way. The world around you continues to turn. The markets fill with the noise of daily life, and the city grows back into something resembling normal. But for you, every step forward feels like a reminder that you've changed in ways you never expected, ways you can't explain. The faces of the past, the faces of the dead, the faces of your lost companions linger in your mind, just out of reach, like ghosts in the shadows. You're walking through the streets, moving as if it's a normal day, but inside, you're still caught in the past. You can hear the rattling of your cartwheels, the cries of the dying, the toll of the death bells echoing in your ears, the noise of the present, the chatter of traders, the laughter of children, the sound of people working is all too much, too loud. You can't escape the quiet that follows you, the hollow emptiness that refuses to go away. You're here, but you're not really here. You're living, but you're not alive. Not in the way others are. Historians still argue about how the survivors of the plague adjusted to life after it ended. Some say that the trauma left a permanent mark on their society, while others believe that people adapted quickly, driven by a need to rebuild. But for you, it's clear. The scars don't fade. They may heal, but they don't go away. You carry them with you, silently, invisibly, in every step, in every breath. It's not something that can be seen, but it's something that can never be fully escaped. The world around you is full of people who've moved on. They've rebuilt their lives, reclaimed their normalcy, and returned to their families and their work. But you've been left behind in a way that's hard to explain. It's not that you want to stay stuck in the past. It's just that you can't seem to escape it. Every time you try to take a step forward, the weight of everything you've seen holds you back. You can't just forget the bodies, the fear, the devastation. You can't pretend it didn't happen, even though everyone else seems to have done just that. But the hardest part isn't the fear or the pain or the isolation. It's the quiet realization that you'll never be the same. That the city, the people, the world, it's all different now. And you're different too. You can't go back to who you were before the plague. That person is gone. And in their place, you're left to figure out who you are in this new, broken world. The survivors talk about the future as if it's something to look forward to. But for you, the future feels like a distant, hazy idea. You don't know what it looks like. You don't know how to move forward when the past is still so present, so vivid in your mind. The world is rebuilding, but you're not sure if you'll ever fit back into it. And yet, somehow, you keep going. You keep moving forward, one step at a time, even though it feels like you're walking through a world that's no longer yours. The ghosts of the past are never far away. You see them in every face you pass, in every corner of the city, in every moment of quiet. And while the world around you may rebuild, The truth is that you're still carrying the weight of everything you've seen, and maybe that's the price of survival. Maybe that's what it means to make it through something like the Black Death. You don't get to escape it. You don't get to walk away unscathed. But you're still here, and that, in itself, is something. Every day you survive is another victory, even if it doesn't feel like one. Maybe the city has moved on. Maybe the people around you have moved on. But you, the plague cart driver, will never truly move on. You'll always carry the past with you, whether you want to or not. And that's your reality now. It's strange, isn't it? How much the world can change in the blink of an eye. Yet you, the survivor, remain unchanged in ways you can't explain. People come and go. The city rebuilds, and the world seems to move on. But for you, the weight of the plague, the death, the suffering, the loss is something that has shaped you in ways that no one else will ever understand. You've seen the worst of humanity, the rawest edges of survival, and now you're left trying to piece together what's left. The thing is, no one talks about what happens after. No one talks about the aftermath, the long-term effects of surviving something so catastrophic. Everyone around you seems to think that just because the plague has passed, life should go back to normal. But for you, normal is a foreign concept. Normal died along with so many others. You've learned that you can never truly go back to who you were. The world around you may try to rebuild, but the cracks are too deep. They're part of you now. You walk the streets, and you're still surrounded by the same city. The same people are rebuilding their homes, their lives, but you're not a part of it. You can't be, not after everything you've seen. The city may be standing again, the markets may be full, and the laughter may have returned, but you don't hear it the same way anymore. The faces are the same, but you see them through a different lens. You see them for what they've lost, for what you've all lost. The cracks in the pavement, the empty spaces where families used to gather. It's all a reminder that the plague didn't just take lives. It took something much more precious, the world as it was. Historians argue whether the Black Death fundamentally altered medieval society, whether it marked the end of the old world and the beginning of something new. Some say that the plague paved the way for a new social order, for the rise of a more modern, individualistic society. Others claim that it deepened the rifts in society, creating long-lasting divides that were never fully repaired. But for you, it's irrelevant. What matters is that you survived. You made it through the worst of it. And yet, every day, you feel the weight of what you've lived through, the lives you've carried, the faces that are now fading into memory. You've learned that survival isn't just about getting through the day. It's about learning to live with the past, about finding a way to carry it with you, without letting it crush you. The world around you may never be the same, but you're still here, and that's something, isn't it? It's something that no one can take away from you. You survived. You're still standing, but standing doesn't mean you're whole. You're not the same person you were before, and maybe that's the hardest part of all. Maybe it's not the bodies you carried, or the lives you watched slip away that haunt you the most. It's the realization that you've been irrevocably changed, and there's no going back. The world around you may be rebuilding, but you're still stuck, suspended between the past and the future. The old world is gone, and so is the person you once were. Yet, somehow, you find the strength to keep moving. Every day, you get up. Every day, you step out into the world that has continued without you. You might not fit in. You might never feel whole again. But you're still here, still surviving. And maybe that's the most anyone can ask for. The plague may have taken everything from you. Your friends, your family, your old life. But it didn't take your will to survive. It didn't take your ability to keep going, one foot in front of the other, even when the world feels like it's closing in. That's what you have left. That's what the plague didn't take, your strength. And for now, that's enough. Time has a way of wearing things down, doesn't it? Even the hardest memories, the most painful scars, begin to fade with time. But not for you. For you, the passage of time feels like a slow, unrelenting march forward. A journey you didn't choose, but one you've been forced to endure. The world around you continues to rebuild. Life seems to find its rhythm again, and people talk of a future that is bright with possibilities. But you're still stuck in the rubble of a past that refuses to let go. The plague may be over, but the consequences still linger, and in some strange way, you've come to realize that perhaps they always will. Survival has become your identity. You don't know who you are without the weight of what you've lived through. The faces of the dead, the cries of the infected, the endless days spent hauling the bodies of those you couldn't save. They've all merged into one continuous nightmare that now defines your existence. It's not that you want to stay in the past. It's just that the past hasn't quite let go of you yet. Every corner you turn, every new face you meet, reminds you of what you've lost. But no one else sees it. No one else feels the weight you carry. To them, you're just another survivor. Someone who made it through the worst of it and is now expected to move on. But for you, moving on feels impossible. How do you move on when the past is still right there, breathing down your neck, reminding you of every moment you've lived through? Historians have long debated the psychological toll of pandemics, like the Black Death. Some claim that the survivors lived with a sense of guilt and trauma that lasted for generations, while others believe that human resilience meant that people quickly returned to normal life. But for you, the reality is different. There is no normal anymore. The world around you may be rebuilding, but you're still walking through the ruins, carrying the weight of everything that's happened. You know that the past can never be fully erased. It's there, lingering in the background, and it shapes everything you do, everything you feel. But despite everything, you've learned something valuable through this long, painful journey. Survival is enough. You may never be whole again. You may never feel truly connected to the world around you. but you are still here. And sometimes that's all that matters. The city can rebuild. The survivors can go back to their lives. But for you, survival is its own victory. It doesn't matter if the world understands. It doesn't matter if the people around you have moved on. What matters is that you made it through. You survived, and no one can ever take that away from you. The world may be different now. The people may be different, but in the end, you are still here, and that, in its own quiet way, is a triumph. As the city continues to thrive, you find yourself walking the streets once again. But this time, there's a slight shift in how you see it all. The world hasn't changed. Not really. But you have, and maybe that's enough. Maybe that's the key to moving forward. You can't change the past. You can't undo what you've lived through. But you can learn to live with it. You can find a way to carry the weight of the past without letting it crush you. And as you take each step, one foot in front of the other, you realize that maybe, just maybe, you've found your way forward. The world continues to rebuild. The city continues to thrive, and life goes on. And so do you.